Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
It's Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Governor Mike Braun's property tax plan could save you tens or hundreds of dollars, but cost your local government millions. That's the message that came out of the first hearing on the proposal. It's the top priority for both the Braun administration and Senate Republicans this session. Our government reporter Garrett Bergquist shows us the numbers.
Right now, the proposal is virtually identical to what Braun offered on the campaign trail, and two central Indiana mayors say it could jeopardize public safety. While lawmakers held their first hearing, the governor brought in two homeowners to make their case. Jenny Wright says her taxes went up $1,200 over 4 years.
We're very close to having our home paid off, and my concern is that we're going to get our home paid off and then we're going to spend, all that extra savings paying taxes. And we're still young enough to be working for several more years.
The plan would let you take either a 60% homestead deduction or reset your property tax bill to what it was in 2021.
I think every Hoosier homeowner, to some extent or another, has had some version of what you're talking about. And what I've proposed out there is to look at what would have been reasonable and then reset it to that level.
The big question is what that relief costs local governments. The state's budget writers say Braun's plan would cost local governments a combined total of more than $1 billion.
The negative impacts of this bill would likely lead to a mandated 10 to 15% cut, which would put the city of Terre Haute in a very, very poor position from a public safety standpoint.
Sackbun and Carmel Mayor Sue Finkham say they're not against property tax reform, but a more targeted approach could head off some of the damage. Finkham says Carmel could lose $26 million under the current plan. That's a quarter of the city's general fund.
That is going to impact every single service we offer. It would be a dissatisfier when it comes to building inspection, fence permitting, public safety, you name it. Every single thing would have to be touched.
Braun says he's willing to work with local officials, such as Finkham and Sackbun, but he says he wants them to keep looking for ways to save on their own.
I'm going to always be listening to something that's reasonable because we don't want to sacrifice essential services. We want to plow resources into our school districts, but look at it from both angles, which is what I'm doing.
The bill is still very early in the legislative process. Bill author Senator Travis Holdman says he'll file an amendment next week based on the testimony we heard today. If you would like to see how the property tax plan would affect your local government, take out your phone and scan the QR code on your screen. That will take you to the As Seen On section of our website. I have included a link to the state's own rundown of how individual local governments would be affected by the plan. It's in the article for this story. At the State House, I'm Garrett Bergquist for Wish TV, wishtv.com, or follow us on Facebook for updates.
Meanwhile, many mayors tell us for now that they're waiting to see what lawmakers actually come up with. I talked with Zionsville Mayor John Stehr about how the property tax plan would affect his town. Mayor Stehr, let me ask you, if SB 1 passes in its current form, how will that affect Zionsville?
Well, we're taking a look at that. Our best estimate right now is that for the next budget year, 2026, it'll cost us between $2.8 million and $3.5 million from our revenue stream. In 2027, it'll be between 3.5 and 4.5, and then in 2028, closer to $5 million. So that's a pretty significant hit, and we've begun to take a look at what we can do to mitigate that. If there are other revenue streams that we could activate, or if we're going to have to figure out ways to make our services fit into that budget.
Well, to that point, and you know this, that Governor Braun has called on cities and towns to maybe find ways that they can cut costs. Is that possible for Zionsville?
Well, you have to live in the world that you live in, and if it is the only choice we have, it's the only choice we have. But I think that people need to realize that while they want to pay less in property tax, I want to pay less in property tax. I know you do too. But they still want to have police. They still want to have fire protection. They still want to have an ambulance show up if they need it, and roads to drive on. So, these are the things that we're spending our money on. There's not a lot of fluff in our budget. Over 50% of our budget is in public safety, and then you add Department of Public Works to that, and you're up closer to 70% of the budget. So, there's not a lot of fat that I can see that we can cut, but, we're going to have to play the hand that we're dealt if that's the hand that we're dealt in a couple of months.
That sets me up for my next question perfectly. How would this and will this affect public safety if you do have to go forward and make some tough decisions?
Well, you never want to get to the point where you're laying off police officers or firefighters. I think the people that live in Zionsville and the people that live in any municipality, they deserve the right to expect good police service and police officers that are well equipped and well trained. Same with the fire department and having the right equipment and having the right training. So that's going to be our challenge. And I guess if it was easy, anybody could do it. But we're gonna do the best we can, again, with the hand that we're dealt.
As you very well know, and you mentioned it earlier, that homeowners clamored for this during the campaign. Do they have a point?
Well, sure. I think property taxes have grown at an exponential rate as the value of property has. And it's great to see your home value go up, but if you're not selling your house, it really doesn't mean that much to you. All it means is that your property tax rate is going to go up a significant amount. So I can see it from both sides. But I think at the end of the day, we need to work together and look at this realistically. I think, people need to understand, as I understand, and I hope most people understand, that the services that we provide on a municipal level are not things that are really negotiable in their lives. These are important things that add to the quality of life, that add to the viability of our communities, and we need to make sure that those things are protected and preserved.
Mayor Stehr, I appreciate you coming on, and I know that you weren't in office back in 2021, but what led to property taxes, an uptick in property taxes, I should say, back in 2021 and now even?
Well, I know it's all tied to property values, and during the COVID era, I should say, the property values increased exponentially. I noticed that on my assessment that came from the county every year, and if you own a home, you probably noticed that too. And the property taxes are tied to market value. That's the way we decided to do it here in Indiana back in 2002. That's the way 48 states do it out of the 50. So it's nothing that is unusual. It's nothing that is off the reservation. It is the way that we calculate our taxes, and we just have to find the right balance where people aren't overtaxed, but they still have the protections and the amenities and the support services that they need.
Do you think maybe local municipalities lean too heavily on property taxes?
I didn't create the system. I just know, the revenue streams that I have and what we need to accomplish with that revenue. So here in Zionsville, our budget is just over $50 million. So if you're talking about taking $3 million out of that, I'm not a math genius, but that's 6% of our budget. So finding 6% reductions across the board, that's really hard. In addition to most of our budget going to public safety and then add DPW to that, at the end of the day, a large portion of our budget is for personnel and for salaries and for benefits and things like that we pay our people. Our people are the best part of us here in Zionsville. Our people give great service to our community. I know that our community appreciates that. So we just have to find the balance to make sure that we can still provide the services that people expect and that I think people deserve.
If SB 1 is approved and does go forward, are you looking at ways to maybe make up some of that money?
Well, we'll see where we are at that time. As you know, Phil, and I do from watching our state legislature for so many years, what they're talking about in February is sometimes very different than what they're talking about in April. So we'll see where this all ends up. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had. And hopefully what the legislature will decide is not just to erase our tax revenue, but also replace it with something else. And I think there are ways to get there. I know that some ideas are being knocked around back and forth, and we're certainly lobbying, and we'll see where it ends up, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Zionsville Mayor John Stehr, always good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Phil. It's my pleasure. Good to see you.
And coming up after the break, an exclusive interview as a fight among Indianapolis Democrats spills into the open. Welcome back to this Sunday. Democrats on the Indianapolis City County Council have ousted one of their own from their caucus. Jesse Braun has represented the area around Brookside Park in Indianapolis for more than a year now. News 8's Councilor Russell explains how Braun believes speaking out against Mayor Joe Hogsett and his own party led to that decision.
In his first on-camera interview since he was removed, Jesse Braun says his voters are losing their representation in city government after 13 of his fellow councilors voted to remove him from the party's caucus.
Embarrassing the powerful.
Embarrassing the powerful. That's what self-described Democratic Socialist Jesse Braun says led to his expelling.
Very clearly, very obviously.
Braun says he walked into a council meeting Monday, and as soon as it was called to order, he was faced with a vote to expel him. 5 councilors did not vote to remove Braun. He initially said he was not given a reason for their decision, but Braun now says the caucus made the move because he recently voiced his concern, with 3 of his Democratic colleagues joining with former Republican mayor of Indianapolis, Greg Ballard, calling for Indianapolis public schools to give away some of its resources to charter schools. In January, his constituents received a text in support of the 3 councilors' initiative. So Braun asked the councilors to explain the text and didn't get a straight answer.
And instead, it's a culture where discussion and debate is not tolerated, even behind closed doors. Orders come from on high. There's very little room or time for discussion.
Braun took his concerns with the text to the public. He thinks that was a bridge too far for some of his colleagues and prompted the move. The caucus released a statement saying they felt it was in the best interest he be removed from the caucus and continue acting as an independent council member.
Yeah, I stand with my constituents. I never want to pick a fight that they don't want me to pick.
On Tuesday, he thought he would be stripped of his committee assignments. While that didn't happen, many of his supporters showed up to demand he be reinstated to the caucus.
I'm a duly elected precinct committee person for the Democratic Party. There's really no precedent or excuse for saying I shouldn't get to sit with the Democratic caucus, and yet before I'd even taken a public step or been sworn in, there was a large push to not seat me with the Democratic caucus. And I was told that, yeah, this word socialism, it's toxic, it's impossible, we can't be seen associating with you.
Jesse Braun said he still expects to be stripped of those committee assignments at any point. He also pointed out that he's currently only assigned to 3 committees, unlike most of his colleagues that sit on 6 committees each. I'm Kyla Russell for Wish TV, wishtv.com, or follow us on Facebook for updates.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team tackles Governor Braun's property tax plan and a DEI ban moving through the legislature. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in 2 members of Indiana's best political team with us in studio this time. Democrat Dana Black, good to see you, Dana, and Republican Allie Bartlett. Hey, let's start with Governor Mike Braun's property tax plan. Okay, so we heard earlier in the show that it's going to affect both homeowners and local governments. Allie, I'll start with you here. Governor Braun has said, listen, local municipalities need to find ways to cut some spending. Is that possible? Because we heard from Zionsville Mayor John Stehr said, listen, most of our budget is, public safety and DPW. This is going to be tough.
Look, I think we are seeing from the top down, from the federal government level down to the local government level, the need to cut spending. I think everyone across the board understands that those cuts are going to be difficult to make, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be made. We need to focus on government spending and saving to benefit the taxpayer. I know personally that Governor Braun has taken so much time meeting with voters, talking to taxpayers about their biggest issues, and one of them is this. Right. It's property taxes, because they have become so astronomical over the last several years. People just can't sustain that type of growth anymore. And so people are going to have to become creative in their efforts to make cuts to their budgets, but it's just something we're going to have to do to support Hoosiers.
Dana, I'll let you respond to that also, though, to Allie's point. This was something that was big on the campaign trail. Property taxes are an issue.
Absolutely. Listen, I don't think we're asking the right question. Why are these property taxes going up so quickly in a 5-year span? Is it because you have a lot of corporate entities coming in, buying up homes? Mm-hmm. Is it because we're spending so much money in law enforcement and locking people up? Or is it the fact that we're giving coupons to wealthy families to send their kids to private schools in the form of vouchers? We're not even looking at why the costs are going up. We just want to slash the costs without taking into account what's making all this happen.
To the making some tough decisions, though, is that possible, in your opinion?
I just find it problematic that our governor has said to local governments, especially like Marion County, where every other day somebody is complaining about the roads already,
right,
and then saying that they have to do more with less, but then you tell wealthy families, here, you can go do more with more. We just gave you a voucher.
I'll let you respond to that.
Look, how much respect do I have for my girl Dana being able to weave school choice and vouchers into this conversation?
Right into one, huh?
She is the best of the best for that reason. My response is this. It's just what I said before. Look, we are going to be making tough decisions across the board here. This is not just local government. This is from the top down. Government spending is #1 on the priority list across the board. And so tough decisions are going to have to be made. We recognize that they're tough, but these are all going to be to the benefit of the taxpayer, which is going to make our state's economy stronger in the end.
I don't know if it will be to the benefit of the taxpayer, because when you start to reduce services, it also hurts the taxpayer. So when there are things that need to be done in your community and you won't be able to get them done because there's no money, how does that help the taxpayer? Right. Or they go to the process of privatizing everything, and then, you know, the taxes that come
And
with
look,
that.
I will say, I'm not going to deny that there does have to be a healthy balance there. I think the conversations have to be had. What I think Governor Braun hopes, and that I hope personally, is that those conversations are started as a result of these things, and that it will be to the ultimate benefit of the taxpayer, as this is something that has come up for him repeatedly across the campaign trail.
But again, I think we also need to ask, why are these property taxes going up so high?
And I don't disagree with that.
Well, a big part of it,
and
and Mayor Stehr addressed it. He said, listen, back, you know, home prices went up through the roof since the pandemic. And of course, if property taxes are related to that, the assessed value of your home, they're going to go up. So we'll see what happens with this one. Good conversation. Speaking of the State House, though, the State Senate on Thursday, as you very well know, approved a bill to prohibit DEI offices in any state agencies or state universities. Dana, we'll start with you. What exactly is the harm here?
There's a whole lot of harm if you try to decide that there are certain words and phrases that the government is not going to allow agencies to talk about. I thought this was the First Amendment caucus.
Right.
And now they're saying, well, we can't say things that we know are inherently true. We already know that there have been instances and cases of people not getting an opportunity to show their skill set because the person that's doing the hiring is not comfortable with their sheer existence. So the idea that they're taking this out, look, I'm gonna be real honest, this is a whole bunch of mediocre white dudes feeling like they have to compete with exceptional people of color and women, and they ain't liking it.
Okay. All right, I'll let you respond to that, Allie. Go ahead.
Look, I think the key here is that we have to focus on what the actual subject matter of this bill is, which is to say that taxpayer dollars are not going to be spent on these types of very particularized initiatives within state-funded institutions. This is not an attempt to silence anybody's First Amendment rights. This is actually not even an attempt to decrease efforts to improve diversity at state-funded institutions. This is an effort to say that we're not going to waste taxpayer dollars to put together these types of programs when these initiatives can be accomplished without an office of DEI or a vice president of diversity or something like that.
Quickly, can it be accomplished? Go ahead.
Accountability. No, it can't be accomplished.
Go ahead.
I mean, my goodness, we had to take to the streets just to get the Civil Rights Act. So you think people are just going to arbitrarily say, oh, okay, you know what, I'm going to be good, I'm going to do the right thing. We know that they don't. And that's what the office is for, is to hold accountability. I mean, when you say that I'm going to take intersectionality out of the conversation when you're dealing with demographics, when you say that in the healthcare industry, you don't think, Allie, we and you get along great, but there are biological differences between us as a black woman and a white woman that we need to be able to address and have legitimate conversations. But when you take that out and say, well, I can't even say that thing exists, then who's harmed? Usually it's the person who is in the minority.
Right.
But I will just say, I think the key here is that we're not denying that these conversations need to take place and that they will continue to take place. We're just not going to spend taxpayer dollars to do it.
I think we need
to Dana's point, though, not everybody gets along like us three.
It's
100%.
We are America.
But look, at the end of the day, tough conversations are going to be tough. We have to all be adults in the room, and I know that sometimes that doesn't happen, but we're just not going to spend taxpayer dollars to put these things into action.
Republicans are saying they don't even want it to happen. They don't want the tough conversations.
No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying that we're not going to waste taxpayer dollars to fund these offices anymore. And that's the bottom line here.
You need to study.
And that's where we're going to differ in that, because I do agree that the conversations are important. We always are going to be focused on moving our best foot forward in all of our institutions, including those that are funded by the state, but we're not going to pay
just look
for
at
those
the makeup of the entire executive branch and the majority in the State House.
Garrett, our producer, is giving us a tough rap, so good conversation. As always, good to see you both in studio. Thank you, and we will be right back. And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here, of course, next Sunday morning at 9:30. And be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.